so glad to be with you this morning. For singing along today, there are lyrics in the back, and you can also go to the Grove's website to find some lyrics there. Kiddos, if you want, there are some ribbons and instruments up at the front here if you would like to be part of the band. But as you're ready, please rise as you're able, and we'll join in some song.
Church of God, united to serve one common Lord, proclaim to all one message with hearts in glad accord. Christ ever goes before us, we follow day by day, with strong and eager footsteps along the upward way. Though creeds and tongues may differ, they speak, O Christ, of thee, and in thy loving spirit we shall one people be. Lord, may our faithful service and singleness of aim proclaim to all the power of thy redeeming name. May thy great prayer be answered, that we may all be one, close bound by love, united in thee, God's blessed Son, to bring a single witness, to make the pathway bright, that souls which grope in darkness may find the one true light. O Church of God, united to serve one common Lord.
All right, you can take a seat.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I know this isn't 4th of July weekend, but I think some people treat both the Sunday before 4th of July and the Sunday after 4th of July as 4th of July weekend. So, the few, the proud, you are here. As we say at the Grove, the right people show up, and you are the right people who have shown up today. So, thank you for being here. My name is Jeremy. If we haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, I'm one of the pastors here at the Grove, and we are a new church that exists to grow goodness. And so my hope is that those of you who are here with us today, you're watching us later online, you're interacting with us out in the community throughout the week. Hopefully those interactions are nurturing healing, wholeness, and beauty in your life. Just want to turn to a couple logistical things as we get started this morning. First of all, if you didn't grab one already, we have our worship handout, which is here. That has some of the most important information that you're going to want to know about the church. On the back, also, again, there's that QR code for the link code or for the link tree that has our announcements on it. But if you go to that, it also has the link to our online lyrics if you want to do that online. Otherwise, again, we do have printed lyrics that are on that back screen. So as you open up the worship handout, on the left-hand side, it has some of the most important information that you're going to want to know about the church. On the bottom, there's information about giving. You can give in person, online, or even via Venmo. Then on the right-hand side, there's information about kids in worship. Obviously, kids are not only welcome here, but they're celebrated members of this church community. We say that and we mean it. And things change a little bit as we move outside. So because we do not have our normal Grove Kids programming throughout the summer, you are responsible for your children, not us. So as we're outside, they're welcome to move about. Obviously, we have the playground back there. We have the line over here where they can tie things on. They're obviously able to move around. However, you need to keep your eye on them and ears out for them. Make sure they're not going into the parking lot or into the road, staying in front of the stage, and then The children that you are responsible for should not be in the building unless you are in there with them. Just because there's an adult in there does not mean that adult is responsible for them. You are responsible for them. We do have the nursery available inside. It's not staffed, but it is available if you need that. Then as you turn to the back of the worship handout, we have our announcements that we have been keying in on this month. Really, there's only one that still matters, kind of 1.5. But the first one is the property improvement campaign. So throughout the month of June, we've been talking about our property improvement campaign that raises awareness and funds for projects that help to improve our property, not only for us as a church, but for any organizations that use our property as well. And this year's big project is the heat pumps. As you can see, they're still sitting over there, not yet installed. We have to pour a new cement slab in order to get them on that cement slab and then officially installed. But they're right there for your viewing pleasure, and a reminder that this is our major project for this year. Those are replacing the 4 furnaces that were 30 years old. All of them failed over the winter, which means we now get heat. We will get heat from those things, but also for the first time in the history of this building, they will provide us with air conditioning as well, which means on Sundays when it's 94 degrees and sweltering out here, we would then have an option to be inside without it being sweltering hot in there as well. You're welcome to give to this campaign and to this project at any time, but we're wrapping up the campaign in this next week. So if you haven't done so already, you can go to that QR code and go to the website to learn more or to give today. We also have some handouts that are available on that check-in table over there that have more information and also giving envelopes if you want to give in person for that. Strawberry Fest is over. We didn't participate in it. The last one is Justice June. We are reaching the end of June. That does not mean that we are done with our connection to the justice-related issues, especially around LGBTQ inclusion. And so on July 9th, we are going to be hosting an event here at our Cottage Grove location with PRISM, which is an organization that's doing community networking across the state. And so we have a Cottage Grove LGBTQ community conversation that's going to be happening here on July 9th. And we would love for you to show up, to participate in those conversations, and if you're interested, to help us to manage the logistics of the evening as well. So if you are wanting to show up for that, again, it is on here. It's also on the Linktree if you want to sign up online. And we're going to be pushing this as much as possible to be a host for this event. So we hope that you'll at least consider being a part of that. I think that's it for announcements. So with that, we're going to move into Connection Point. Connection Point, again, is your opportunity to connect with people around you through a little bit of forced interaction. It's not yet the 4th of July weekend. That's next weekend because the 4th of July is on Friday. However, 4th of July may or may not already be on your mind. And so today's question for you to discuss with the people around you is, what do you like to do for the 4th of July? Are you a fireworks people? We're not fireworks people, but maybe you are. Maybe you go across the state lines and get all of the good stuff and then blow it up in your backyard, and we get mad at you for blowing it up in your backyard at 10:30 at night when I'm trying to keep my kids in bed. Maybe you like to do other things on the 4th of July. Whatever your answer might be for that, why don't you stand up, find someone near you don't know or don't know very well, introduce yourself, tell us what you like to do for the 4th of July, and then we'll circle back up in a few minutes. Ready, go.
was like 4 people at the 11:30, which was understandable because it was like 90 degrees. Yeah, it was hot. The sprinkler, I went and stood in the sprinkler in between. It felt nice.
A little bit. I'm gonna get my sunglasses from the car now. All right, everybody. Glad to see such great conversation happening out there. I'll have you take your seats, and we are going to, or I'm going to share a poem or a reading inspired by the hymn, "They Will Know We Are Christians by Our Love." And this is by Jeremy Richardson. Not by the wealth we claim to own, nor by the thrones we build of stone, but by the grace our lives reveal, a love that mends, a love that heals. Not by the banners we unfurl, nor by the power we seek in this world, but by the kindness our hearts impart, a love that grows from the sacred heart. They will not know us by word alone, empty echoes from hollow tones. They'll see it lived, this truth we sing, a love that moves in everything. When burdens crash the weary frame, we lift the load in mercy's name. When tears flow freely, unchecked, unplanned, we reach to hold with gentle hands. For love is the mark, the truest creed, a call to serve, to meet the need. No pride, no borders, no vain display, but love that lights the darkest way. They will know we are Christians by our love, a flame that mirrors the stars above. And through this love, the world will see the Christ who dwells in you and me. All right. I'll have you rise as you're able once again, and we'll join together in another song. Come gather round the mystery of love in our broken history, where grace heals the fault lines in me. Time again, it welcomes me into a
house for the hungry, a well for the thirsty, where all saints come together, shoulder to shoulder, a welcome for the traveler. For the hungry, a well for the thirsty, where all saints come together, shoulder to shoulder, a welcome for the traveler, a new wine for the vineyard, in all things God is able. Till it's running over. There's an empty seat waiting next to me. We gotta make some room for each other. Let my enemy be my family. Fill my cup till it's running over. And I'm a house for the hungry, a well for the thirsty, where all saints come together, shoulder to shoulder,
take a seat.
So we tried to go without the tents today because it was supposed to be cloudy. I think we're going to be putting up tents in between services. In the meantime, I'm going to be moving around trying to stay in the shade. I have only been wearing glasses for 17 years. I know some people have had glasses from when they're really young. I didn't get glasses until I was in college and was having trouble seeing the screen. But as soon as I started wearing glasses, I stopped wearing sunglasses. Part of that's logistical. I wore a lot of hats, and so like the hat would kind of cover my eyes a little bit. I also found that prescription sunglasses are kind of expensive, and I didn't necessarily want to spend the money on prescription sunglasses. I decided that I did not want the wraparound glasses that went on top of my glasses. Robin's got some over there. Nothing against the wraparound glasses. Nothing against the wraparound sunglasses, but that was not my vibe. And then I also didn't have, I couldn't justify any individual sunglasses that could just, that I could just wear. I have a really small prescription, so I can get away without wearing my glasses, but I couldn't justify not wearing them. I just never found the glasses that would justify not wearing them, even though my prescription was so little. Yeah, Chelsea's making fun of my prescription right now. It's very minimal. However, 3 years ago, I started running, and when I started running, our very own Melinda Haas introduced me to Gooder sunglasses. I know some of you have Gooder sunglasses. I only have 4 pairs right here. I don't know how many pairs we have total at home because we have an obscene number of sunglasses now at home. Folks, these are only $25, and they come in a wide variety of shades and colors. You can match them with your outfits, as I often do, if you care about it, something like that. So these are just a few of them. You can see like they come in fun colors, and then the lenses are different colors as well. These ones are particularly fun, but they're not polarized, so I can only wear them in some settings. These are pretty disgusting. I wear them for running as well. Sometimes I don't clean them when I come back from running. But anyways, finally it's like, well, they're only $25. They are worth the change because my prescription is so small to be able to deal with maybe my sight not being exactly perfect. Now, here's the thing, though, with sunglasses, and especially fun sunglasses like these that have different colored lenses and different kinds of lenses in them. They change the way you see the world. And sometimes they change the way you see the world in that they allow you to see things that other people can't see. There will be times when I'm out running and I'm able to see a rainbow up in the sky, and then I just do this and the rainbow's not there, except that I can see it through these lenses. And then there's other times where there are things that you can't see that other people can see. One of the issues that I run into on Sunday mornings when I'm out here is I can't see this little green light that tells me whether my microphone's on or not unless I do this. And that's completely fine, completely normal, of course, but it's something that if you're wearing sunglasses or any different types of lenses, you got to be aware that those lenses are getting in the way and affecting the way that you see the world and everything in it, for better or worse. Now, I say this as an illustration because each of us, whether we're aware of it or not, whether we're willing to admit it or not, have lenses through which we see and understand the world and everything in it. And this is even and especially the case when we talk about the life of faith. There are certain people, certain traditions, even the one that I grew up in, and when I was in seminary, your goal is to be like a neutral observer. You're supposed to be like a journalist who looks at the world and the Bible as clearly as possible. Your job is to get out of the way, to have a view from nowhere, is what they say. And your job is simply to say, well, what did the original author intend to communicate to the original audience? Let's not let anything else in the way. It doesn't matter what your own experiences, what your own beliefs are. Let's just look as clearly as possible. Couple problems with that. Number one is that it's almost impossible for us 2,000 years later, half a world away, to add accurately, adequately try to figure out what someone writing in a now dead language was completely trying to communicate? That's one problem. The other problem is that assumes that the person writing it didn't have their own lenses and their own beliefs and their own things that informed what they were writing and trying to communicate. This is why we can read something, whether it's the Bible or something else, alongside somebody who's reading the exact same stuff, and we can walk away and say, how on earth did you get that when I got this? Again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be a bad thing, but it's just something to kind of acknowledge instead of just assuming that we are coming in alongside other people and saying, this is an objective, clear reality. We are all coming in with our lenses. It's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It just is. So today we're starting a new series called The Greats, where we are looking at 5 different passages from the Bible, which we have highlighted as the greatest teachings in the whole Bible. And the idea is that these 5 teachings should inform the way that we see the world and our faith and how we live and move within it. And so part of this series is acknowledging these are the lenses that we think as a church and as your church leaders that ought to be affecting the way that we see all of life and all of faith. But they're lenses. And it's possible that there are things that are even within the Bible that are different or maybe even contradictory. But that it's important to have these lenses to say, you know what, when there is any question, these are the things that we are going to, these are the things that are actually going to define how we live and move and have our being in the world. Maybe that's a little strange to try to process, but this is the way that people thought 2,000 years ago. This is the way that people thought in the world that Jesus was living, and this is actually the way that Jesus thought as well. So we have these stories where people actually ask Jesus the questions of, what lenses do you use to see life and faith? And he gives a pretty clear answer about what those lenses are. So today's first of the greats is known as the Great Commandment, and this comes to us from Mark chapter 12. Mark is one of the 4 biographies about the life of Jesus, and this is how it goes. One of the scribes came near and heard them disputing with one another. And seeing that he answered them well, he being Jesus, he, the scribe, asked him, Jesus, which commandment is the first of all? Jesus answered, the first is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. So again, we have this religious leader who clearly understands people have lenses through which they understand all of life and faith, and they assume that Jesus would as well, and so they just ask Jesus flat out, what's your lens? Which is your greatest commandment? Which is the first one? Which is the one that goes before all of the others? And as Jesus often does, he doesn't exactly answer the question in the way that they had hoped. They ask for one commandment, and he actually offers up 2 and places them side by side. So the first one is this. He quotes from Deuteronomy chapter 6, which says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. This is a passage known in the Jewish tradition as the Shema. Have any of you heard of the Shema before? You've probably heard this passage before, but not necessarily that word. So the Shema is like the best and most important profession in the Jewish faith. It is supposed to come above all else, and it kind of is supposed to set it apart from all of the other faith traditions. What is it about our Jewish tradition that makes it different and better than the others? We've got this one God. And how are we supposed to respond to that acknowledgement? We should love that one God with our heart and soul and mind and strength. In other words, we should acknowledge this one God and give that one God all of our being. So this is a pretty uncontroversial response that Jesus has. And in many ways, it's like, well, this is the best possible response that he could have given. Of course, nobody in his listening audience would have disagreed with offering up the Shema. But then, like I said, he offers up a different one, or a second one as well, that he tags on to this. There's not just one of the best commandments, there's actually two. And this one comes from Leviticus 19. It says, "You shall not hate in your heart anyone of your kin. You shall reprove your neighbor, or you will incur guilt yourself. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people. But," this is the key one, "you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." Interestingly, this command has no reference to God other than God saying it. But instead, the commandment is about loving other people. And Jesus, by putting these side by side, says you cannot separate these two. That there is love of God, but it is intimately tied to the love of neighbor. You asked for one of the best commands, I offer two of them, and they cannot be separated from one another. This one was a little bit more contentious than his first offer, and a little bit more disagreeable, in fact. And we see this in one of the other biographies that we have about the life of Jesus when this great commandment comes up. It actually comes up within the context of a different story. So in the Gospel according to Luke, one of the four biographies about the life of Jesus, there's a man who shows up one day and he asks Jesus, "What do I have to do to inherit eternal life?" And one of the things that Jesus constantly does is answers a question with another question. And Jesus says, "What do you have to do to inherit eternal life?" Well, what does the law say? And the man responds by quoting essentially the Great Commandment. Well, the law says you should love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus hears this, and Jesus responds, "That sounds like a pretty good answer. So just go and do that thing." But then the man responds with another question and says, "Well, I'm supposed to love God and my neighbor, but who is my neighbor?" And then Jesus tells this story that might be familiar to you, known as the Good Samaritan, where there is a Samaritan man and a Jewish man. These two were sworn enemies. The Jewish man finds himself in critical condition. Many people pass by him, aren't willing to help him, and yet this Samaritan man who comes by, who is a sworn enemy, ends up helping the man, getting him the care that he needs. And as he wraps up this story, Jesus again asks the question back to the original question asker and says, "Well, in this story, you've asked me who is my neighbor. In this story, who is the one who's being the neighbor?" And the contentiousness, the hatred is so strong between these two groups that the Jewish man who's talking to Jesus cannot even say the Samaritan, cannot even put that name on his mouth. He instead has to say the one who showed mercy on him. So to sum it all up, according to Jesus, the Great Commandment, the most important teaching that should be the lens through which we see all of life and faith, is to love God and love our neighbors, even and especially those who are completely detestable to us. I would argue that many of the people who were living at the time of Jesus have the exact same issues as we do now. That the whole loving God thing, that's pretty obvious and pretty easy. The whole loving neighbor thing, especially people who we disagree with, who are detestable to us, who are like human sandpaper, that's a whole lot more difficult. And yet, Jesus ties these to one another and says, this is what it means to be a person of faith. This should impact everything that you do and say and believe in the world. You cannot move them apart from one another. Both of them are necessary. Both the love of God and the love of neighbor are important and necessary. So yeah, you should love God. That's the obvious and easy thing. But you need to love your neighbor as well, which is a whole lot more difficult, if not just in theory, also in practice. It's pretty easy in the year 2025 in the United States of America for us to point at other people who are not following through on this. There are many people who would say that they are followers of Jesus or Christians who say that they love God and yet do a really good job of showing that they don't love their neighbors well. And in many respects, there are people, including very prominent people, very powerful people, who say, actually, I'm not going to love and care for my neighbors because I love God this way, which means they're able to say, I love God, but I detest these people, those people over there, immigrants, people of different skin color, people of different religions, trans people, woke liberals. The list could go on and on and on. And if the lens of understanding life and faith look like that, it's almost like they become so foggy that they are recognizable when that next to loving your neighbor, that great commandment that Jesus has raised up. And you might be sitting here thinking, yeah, those people are terrible. Those people over there are awful, and clearly they don't follow this and have this as their lens for understanding all of their life and faith. And I will just offer up to you that one of the other things that each of us has is a lens that suggests that we're always the good people in the stories. It's always the other people who are the ones who are wrong and are doing the wrong things. And I just want to point out that one of the things that I was seeing constantly after the last election back in November is a lot of people were saying, I'm done with those people. The idea was that those people over there who believe and do things differently, who maybe hold up their love of God and clearly aren't loving their neighbors, are so bad, have done so bad, that we just need to completely reject them and walk away from them. And I want to say, like, there's a great importance in having strong boundaries to be able to protect you and to protect the people that you love. And at the same time, saying, I am completely done with those people. When you put that side by side with the Great Commandment, looks pretty iffy as well. And so given the climate that we're in, given that people across the political divide are often finding themselves saying, I can love God and reject my neighbors in pretty meaningful ways, one of the people who I've been incredibly inspired by is Sarah McBride. Any of you familiar with Sarah McBride? Not Martina McBride. What was the other singer? There was another McBride that we were. Not Martina McBride. Sarah McBride is a U.S. representative from the state of Delaware. Sarah McBride is the first openly trans person serving in the U.S. House of Representatives. Now, when Sarah was elected in that very same election in November of 2024, there were a lot of people who were celebrating that she was going to be in the halls of Congress. And there were a lot of people who were not, and have used this as an opportunity to attack her and people like her and all that she represents. So as she comes into Congress, many of her colleagues on the other side of the aisle uses an opportunity to make floor speeches against her and against trans rights. They use it as an opportunity to enforce bathroom bans, where she was not going to be able to use the bathrooms that before she would have otherwise been able to use. And there have even been some pretty prominent cases where they are intentionally misgendering her within committees, so that they can show how strong they are and how wrong she is. At the same time, there are colleagues on her side of the aisle who look at all this and say, clearly this is a political loser, and maybe we need to let Sarah go and stop talking about all of these trans issues and just worry about our own elections as well. It's a pretty difficult position in which she finds herself. And if anybody was able to stand up and say, I'm done with you people, it would be Sarah McBride. And yet that is not at all what she has done and is doing. You see, in addition to being a U.S. representative, Sarah McBride is also an ordained elder in the Presbyterian Church USA. And so she has this faith background as well. She has this understanding of this great commandment that Jesus handed down, and she brings that. That is her lens through which she sees her life and her faith and even her politics. And so here is an astounding quote that she gave to the New York Times just not even 2 weeks ago. Here's what she had to say. We have fallen prey in our online discourse, in our politics, to a sense that cynicism is in vogue. That cynicism shows that we get it. And I think one of the things that we have to recognize is sometimes hope is a conscious effort. And that sense of inevitability, that sort of organic sense of hope that we felt in this post-1960s world, that is the exception to our history. And you have to step into the shoes of the people in the 1950s, people in the 1930s, people in the 1850s, and to move past the history that we view with the hindsight of inevitability and go into those moments and recognize that every previous generation of Americans had every reason to give up hope. And you cannot tell me that the reasons for hopelessness now are greater than the reasons for hopelessness then. There's something audacious. There's some audacity in it. You have to summon it. Optimism is about circumstance. It's about evaluating likelihood. Hope is something that transcends that. And when we allow ourselves, when we lull ourselves into the sense of cynicism, we give up on hope. That is when we lose. The Great Commandment has no room for cynicism nor patience for even optimism. Instead, it summons us as people of faith, even and especially as people of faith, to have the audacity to love God and love our neighbors, trusting that as we do so, no matter how hard, there's nothing more important that we can do. May that be so.
Please rise as you're able and join us in song.
Everyone born, a place at the table. For everyone born, clean water and bread. A shelter, a space, a safe place for growth.
table, to live without fear and simply to be, to work, to speak out, to witness and worship, for everyone born the right to be free.
Y'all can hear me? Yeah. Couple quick things. So we have a few things that can go in your hands. We have the property improvement campaign, the flyer, and a card. If you are like one of these old school people who wants to do this in person, you can fill it out and put it in the offering box over there, or bring it back next week, or mail it into our office. Snail mail's a thing still as well. We also have these, which are handouts for the community conversation that we're doing on July 9th. If you want to grab this for yourself or grab some to hand out to other people that you'd like to invite, that is available. The other thing is, which I just remembered when I was talking about 4th of July weekend, next week, July 6th, we are going to be doing the bike blessing again during worship. So if you want to bike here, you can bike here. If you want to throw the bike in the back of your vehicle and then just show up like that, you're welcome to bring your bike. Little bikes, big bikes, e-bikes. We had at least one unicycle last year. Tricycles, anything with wheels. It's not a car. You're welcome to bring up here. We'll have a spot in the service where you're able to bring them up and we'll say a blessing over them. It's just a fun thing on a holiday weekend to be able to do together. So I think that's it. So with that, you're already standing. We'll have your extended hands to receive this blessing as we go. As we go, may we have the audacity to hope. The audacity not only to love God, but to love our neighbor, trusting that He is indeed the best and most important thing to do.
Amen.
A house for
The hungry,